Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. Today we want to honor Havoc, one of the greatest producers in all of hip hop. And we're going to create in the style of Havoc so that we can learn the grittier style of New York sampling. So you guys will learn a lot of techniques, chopping, using Serato sample, just how to get a vibe out of your sound. Okay, so let's hop straight into FL Studio. If you guys ever want to learn sampling, just go to BusyWorksBeats.com/beginners. We'll guide you through the process of making beats. Okay, so here is, we first need a sample. Okay, so in hip hop, the definition was combining a drum break with a musical sample. So these are two different styles of samples. So here's our first sample here. It's just it already has the sound to it. You can hit shift, left click and jump around here. Okay, so it's super like textury, super organ sounding. Let's load up Serato sample. The reason we use Serato nowadays is because it saves so many steps. Okay, so let's drag this in. And all I want to do is find different chops. We're going to hit find samples. Now I can use my MIDI controller to trigger. Let me turn off my keyboard. Okay. And now I can just play as if it... Okay, so that saves so much time. So all I need to do is just find a musically fitting, really just two notes that work together, or two chops, I should say. So I like that tone, but I also want two more chops. Okay, so let's just try those. So let's go to 82 BPM or somewhere around there. So we want to kind of match the tempo of this sample, which it says 166, but let's divide that by 2, so it's 88. The infamous and then change. Okay, so let's record that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Change up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so it's important to have that change up, or else your beat is just going to sound stale and repetitive. Now, what we could do for the video is quantize these notes. We could hit Alt Q. Here we go. Alt Q. That will line up the chop timing. Now, old school hip hop, they would have these tiny minus, super tiny gaps between the notes sometimes, so it creates a truncated type of sound. Now, I'm gonna leave that little hand drum in. Okay, so now we need some, here's where it goes into advanced mode, is what is in the sample. So what's in the sample is a top line organ. Okay, so we have that. And there's actually a bass in there. Okay, so what we can do is remove the bass. We can go to the Serato sample and we can click on this guitar icon to remove any bass frequencies. We could also get rid of the drum if it is distracting. So it takes time for that to process. But getting rid of the bass will now, pull this layer back to just a top line layer. So we're going to treat it differently in an arrangement than top line plus contrast layer. So this gives us room, okay? Without the bass line there, we can add different stuff. Again, I'm gonna use what I would naturally use. I'm not gonna sit here and just try to make you guys use stuff I wouldn't use, but Flex has this piano. If you go to the store, find the essential packs, go to essential pianos, go to the Yamaha C7. This is a pretty decent sound. Probably the best piano in FL. So we're gonna play really gritty low octaves. Now to the trained ear, you can hear it's not perfectly tuned. So let's hit Control L, send that sound to the mixer. Click this gear icon. We need to change our pitch range to 1 so that we don't change the key. We need to figure out why this piano doesn't sound like it's matching. It's not tuned right. So we need to figure, is it tuned up or down? So it's flat. So we're gonna pitch this up. And now it sounds more in key. We're gonna go from A to E, which is the 5th, okay? I don't want to bore you guys about like every little thing, but let's just record. So it's gonna go just 2 notes, A to E, 1, 2, and we're playing octaves here. Then back to E. Now we can get more fancy with the bass, but I'll show you guys what that looks like. So we're playing an octave really low, A and A, an octave apart, but we're playing super, super low keys here. That's what creates that gritty sound. Now I would prefer my keyboard sound. It just sounds more realistic. So let's go. I'm gonna record this into FL Studio. You guys don't have to. Now my keyboard isn't tuned, so let's go to the tuning. Make sure it actually matches here. 2, 3, 4. Still a little flat. Okay, so I'll use my keyboard just so you guys can have that. Let's record this in. And back to E and change, and again the bass, the contrast layer can be more complicated, but for this vibe we're just going simple. We call that the contrast layer. Okay, so what we're missing from the beat, if we wanted to make an entire full beat, there's 4 layers. You have the top line, which is the organ. In this case, you have the contrast layer, which is our bass area. And then we have the rhythm section, which is our drums. And we're missing what's called the harmony. So here's what it technically looks like. Now, because we're not using the FL piano, I'm just gonna leave it as a contrast layer, but I'm gonna put it on mute so that we don't hear it. Let's hit the mute button here, click that off. That technically goes da. So it goes A. That might be a better change up. Actually, let's record that one more time because I wanted to have that small musical change up to match the sample. All right, so now we have that piano locked in. Let's hit Control. Let's hit Control L, send that to the mixer. Let's label that as the piano. And that's gonna be our contrast layer here. We can tuck it down so it's not so like in the mic. So up close, I should say. Okay, so now we need drums. So let's go to our browser, and here's where we're going to use the drum breaks. I'd recommend you guys just invest in really good drum breaks like from Tammuz. Shout out to Tammuz. I'm going to use his drums for today. And we're going to use, let's try, I think Golden Grooves is more of a funk sound. Let's go for real drums. And let's go to drum breaks. So we're using drum breaks because we could chop out individual slices. The first thing I listen to is the snare. So this is very like Havoc style. So let's right click this, and you know, normally people just drag and drop. For me, I'm going to open this up in Slice because I want this to trigger what are called one shots. So if we go here to the medium auto slicing button, click that if it's not like sliced automatically. So now I can use my keyboard to trigger different drum slices from slice. Okay, if you guys don't have a MIDI controller, you can right click your typing keyboard and switch this to slice mode. You just have to make sure your root note is C, octave is 4. If you mess up anything, you just hit reset and then go to layout slice. You could use your typing keyboard to trigger slice as well, like it's an MPC. So now I just got to find the hi-hats, if there are any. I don't think there are any hi-hats in here. It's just cymbals. Okay, so now we're gonna hit Control X, get rid of the MIDI that it automatically creates. And let's just add our own drums in. Let's turn the metronome on. So I'm gonna add the snare in here. I usually keep one snare. No need to really have 1,000 snares. Let's record this in. Okay, so I played it by hand. We don't need to quantize that for people who are wondering. But if we want it to be quantized, we can. So let's go back to the rhythm that we just created. Okay, so now we just need a kick in here. Gotta find our kick. Now for the kick, I recommend 2 kicks. Now this sample has a cymbal over the kick. So every time we hit a kick, it's gonna be like, that could be a good or a bad thing. So let's first, I'd recommend you guys get what's called a ghost kick, meaning there's a kick that people usually play a little bit lighter than the main kick. So it's go like that. Now in this case, they're kind of played at the same velocity. Anyway, I can get into the weeds, but let's just record this. I don't know how I got off beat that fast. Let's go to a new pattern so we're not. All right, so I like the second half a little bit better. I tried to record on the new pattern. I guess it didn't record on. All right, so let's highlight all these. We're just gonna copy the second half because it's better. Hit Shift, left click to copy. Now let's see what happens if we quantize. Let's hit Alt Q. It might sound better, it might sound worse. It just depends. I think it sounds more cohesive when it's quantized. Now what's throwing off the timing is that do-do from the sample. So little things like this. Let's turn off the drums from the Serato sample. So we get rid of their little percussive thing. Let's do something weird here. Let's go to our piano. Let's go to stretch mode. Let's try pulling this down an octave just to hear what it sounds like. That's really dark. But now we're getting a lot more bass. Just want to hear what it sounds like though. To me, that's a little too dark. It's not even like a nice sound. Now I do need a drum break with a hi-hat. So we need to find a hi-hat in here somewhere. It sounds cool, but I can't tell if there's this. I think there's a hi-hat. So let's right click, open this up. So we need to auto slice it with this button here. And now we need to find that hi-hat. Just a simple hi-hat. We don't need to go crazy. Okay, now this hi-hat is great, but there is a little glitch at the end. What I'll do is move, man, I clicked all the wrong buttons. Okay, do that again. Let's open this up. We need to find that. Let's zoom in to the marker here, it's called. And because it's highlighted, I'm just gonna drag and drop this as a one shot. We don't need to be complex about this, just drag and drop. So now I could use it as if it were any other sample. We're gonna take it off auto mode, right click the time, hit none. Find middle C, and now I'm gonna play this with the beat. Okay, Control X to get rid of the auto dumped MIDI that it created. And let's send the sounds to the mixer. Okay, so we're missing the hi-hat for the timing here, so let's play this. Now there's a little blip, that's why I chopped this. So at the end here, you see this tiny, it just goes up a little bit. Let's right click, edit this. Basically, ends and beginnings have to be at zeros or nodes. So let's fade the ending so that it returns back to a 0 value. Drag that back in the sampler. You don't need to memorize that if you're a beginner. Okay, it just fixes that little click sound. Let's record this. I'm gonna turn off my mic here. So with that hi-hat, now I'm gonna think about changing the kick timing so that it's not so like spaced out. Just add more energy, just playing it faster. Stuff like that. All right, so see how we tighten up the timing. So timing is gonna be probably the hardest thing to get right as a beginner, especially when you're first learning how to sample. Let's try to pitch this hi-hat to match the other kit. So now it's just about making stuff feel cohesive. I kind of want to change out the piano sound. Funny enough, here's where I actually prefer the flex sound of the piano. So we just got to get the tuning right. Alright, so I'd do like the more simple piano instead of the dun, dun at the end. Let's just get this hi-hat lined up a little bit more. So before I start, mixing, let's see what else we can add to this. I feel like it needs some kind of, I feel like we're almost overly filling the beat, but let's add a bass line. Now again, this bass line is not going to come from stock sounds here. So we need to tune this, tune it up, 445 I think. an acoustic bass because it just feels like very New York. Okay, very like boom bappy. Okay, let's record this. So the rhythm is matching the drums. Gonna tighten it up a little bit with the quantize. So I'm just debating on the turnaround area, how I want to play that. Because it's moving a little too much. So let me think of a different ending here. Let's loop this. That was kind of dope. So I was kind of freestyling that, but it sounded fire. I kind of like that, so let's just do something like that. Just changing up, going up the octave. So just switching it up. Don't need to be super creative there. Okay, now we're gonna start mixing so that we can get a vibe, and then we might add stuff, we might not. Let's figure out a way to add reverb to the snare only. Now this is a little complex. So we need to go to the drum pattern that we used. And because I use just one snare, it becomes a little bit easier here. We're gonna zoom in to marker 4, double click. I messed up the slice because that's what happened here. But anyhow, we're gonna move marker 4, change our snap to grid so that we're not doing nothing crazy. Let's take it off and go to snap to 0 crossings. So we're on marker 4, double click, and what we need to do is send the output to a different track. To be short, just adds 1, or I think we can go -2. So basically our drums are routed to channel 6, and we want the snare to be routed to its own thing. So 6 plus 5 will make it channel 11, which is free. So let's go to 6 plus 5. So output plus 5. And okay, so just did that. If you don't want it to do that, turn off auto dump. Now we have the snare on channel 11. This is our snare. So now we can isolate the snare. We can send it to a reverb by itself. Let's load up a reverb here. Now reverb, there's a lot of reverbs out there. And you want to think like for a New York style gritty sound, think mono reverbs or just stuff like this, which is more really for a drum kit. But let's do a plate reverb. Does this have plates on here? Let's do, let me just type in plate, see if it pops up. Okay, it just pulled up a preset. Okay, so we're gonna go to our snare and left click to send it to the reverb. So now it has its own reverb. Okay, so now the snare feels like it's in its own place. We could also do the same thing with the hi-hats, but let's do the same thing for the reverb here. Give it some depth. Let's try doing that for the sample. We can also pull the dry level back from the master. So now we're just hearing the reverb signal. So now we're pushing the sample to the back, basically. So now we have room to add more instruments if we want to. I feel like the drums need a little more quantized on the kick. Also, they're a little too like on the grid. So let's go to the hi-hat to add some time shift. Do the same thing with our main drums. They were too like early sounding. So this is an art to find that perfect spot in the timing. I'll tell you something. Let's see what it sounds like if we add a filter to our kick. So what I did was I changed the articulator of the snare. So I double clicked on the snare, go to the filter articulator, which is a group, and I made that 2 so that everything else in the sample goes to articulator 1 by default. And to add that filter, we just went to articulator 1 envelope, turned on low pass times 1, meaning 1 low pass filter. And I could use this cutoff filter to cut off the high end frequencies of every other part of that sample. So this gets rid of that cymbal that's over top of the kick. So it's a little bit darker. We can also shape our samples with the volume here, volume envelope, to make them more truncated sounding if they're too reverby. So we got to get that hi-hat to feel like it's just a little too bright. Let's pull down Mod X. By default, Mod X is a low pass filter, so it's chiseling out the high end. I feel like it needs a little more, some kind of different detail about the hi-hat. Maybe let's pan the hi-hat a little bit. And let's give it a little more time delay. So now we got rid of that cymbal. We have a little more area in the high end to add some stuff if we wanted to add more stuff. Let's open up our samples. Now I'm changing up the sample. I didn't even listen to the sample chops. I'm just moving the MIDI notes to trigger different parts of the sample. Also, the sample could be too on the grid, so let's go to the wrench tool, turn that time shift. Now we're getting the timing together. This is what professionals know how to do. I feel like we could still add some more instruments. Let's see what we can add. I'm just gonna go through random sounds. There's no like thought process. I'm just going through random sounds here. Off the bat, first sound. Let's record that in. That sounds pretty cool. So we're just adding a little vibe. We're gonna add reverb to that sound. Also, I think the snare is a little too early. Let's delay the snare in our drum pattern. So I'm just going to manually highlight the snares, hit Control to highlight all of the notes horizontally, hit Alt right to move that to the right. This is the hi-hat timing. Let's get this hi-hat timing right. Let's also try a stereo delay on the hi-hat. So it pans left and right. Creates its own like time delay. Now let's start turning these drums up. Want to run this whole mix through Gold clip to add that crunch. So now it's just about making these sounds feel cohesive. Saturation and compression can do that. So this is a top line element here. Let's see what we can do. We're gonna add some reverb to that sound here. We could also shave off some of the high end of the snare, just so it's not as bitey. There we go. So now it's less bitey. I think the hi-hat is just too bright. There we go. Let's add reverb to these sounds here. Add a little reverb, a little delay to the reverb here, just to give it more movement. There we go, now we have a little more width too. I feel like we need to change the bass line though. feel like we need some chords in here. So now I'm debating what I want to add on the top end of this sound here. I kind of like the octave piano. Let's try different chords though. Let's also try pulling the piano to mono. Okay, so now we're just pulling the vibe together here. The mono piano sounds much more in that feel. We can also add reverb to the piano now that it's mono. I pitched down the drums to match the sample more. Now I'm just using octave piano to add top line here. Now it's about pulling this whole vision together in the mixing. We could use compression and saturation to try to pull these drums together a little bit more. All right, so I shaved off a little more high end on the snare to get rid of the cymbal. So I'm shortening the sound of the snare so it's not so heavy. Now we're just trying to add texture to the sound and like a compressed sound. So here's before our mix bus compressors and tape. Doesn't really have any curvature to it. And here's after. If we wanted more width, we can unlock some of the width back in the instruments. Debating if I like this super high end on the snare or not. I mean on the hi-hat. Yeah, I like it more toned back. So again, the goal at this point is to make stuff feel like it's from the same sample. Change the bass octave just to see. that little chord stuff in the background, I'm just playing A minor 9. So now we have that musical like jazz element in the background. I think that was the final touch we needed for this track. So I'm pulling these samples in piano mono to make them feel super like old. Pull the reverb into mono just to see what it sounds like. So I'm making the reverb and the sample more stereo. Debating if I like the piano stereo or mono. It's hard to really judge. Add a little pitch wobble. filtered the kick out a little bit more. It just had too much knock on it. All right, let's let this run one more time. All right, so there we have a Havoc style, Mobb Deep style hip hop beat for you guys. To download these project files, go to busyworksbeats.com/FL Studio. If you want to learn how to make beats like the pros, go to busyworksbeats.com/beginners. All right, guys, peace out. Subscribe if you're new. Peace.